Hello and welcome back to Data Driven Finance, brought to you by InvestNet Yodlee. I'm Mike Stiles, and my guest today is Avery Miller, VP and Head of Digital Consumer Product and the Avion Rewards Platform. Avery got his MBA at the University of Richmond and spent time before going to RBC at Capital One and PayPal. We're going to be talking about how connected finance impacts shopping and card use and loyalty programs. So, Avery, we really appreciate you being with us today.
Really happy to be here. I'm excited to be doing this with you, Michael. This is a topic that I love to riff about. So I think we're going to have a really good time today.
Great. Well, we will riff away because you've done and run a lot of things over your career. But what do you spend the most of your time thinking about these days? What's your current passion and focus?
Wow. Well, aside from the kiddos and sports practices and trying to relearn algebra to help my child out, I actually spend a ton of my time thinking about the modern shopper, right? The consumer that needs to get the things they want or love or require, and how they go through that journey, and how my product managers and my business with Avion Rewards can help them do just that in a way that either takes the load off of them and makes it easier, or at the very least saves a ton of money or puts value back in their pocket.
Yeah, that's great because the whole consumer and shopping experience is certainly changing. We've seen it change incredibly over the past even just few years. How would you grade how banks and financial services organizations in general are doing at keeping consumer wants and the whole customer experience as the priority?
I would say, and this answer is going to be one that's more of like an industry-wide answer, Michael, because I get to talk to a lot of peer banks. I get to go to a lot of industry events and hear the plight of many designers and product managers and product owners. I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think that in North America especially, banks are still largely operating from a starting point of historical products they have built and sold for hundreds of years, right? And if you were to really step back and stare at what a customer wants or needs from a financial institution, it can largely be summed up in 4 jobs. It's holding money and keeping it safe. It's letting them access that money to use it to buy things. It's lending them money when they are short of it or require it for a specific purpose. And it's helping them grow their money, be it through investment or savings or whatnot. And I think when you distill it down to that kind of law of the jungle level of truth, you might come up with different answers about keeping the consumer at the center and keeping the client at the center in terms of experience. I think there are many financial institutions that are trying to do just that. I think there are lots of upstarts that are trying to do just that. It's certainly the way we're approaching the particular job of using that money or accessing that money to buy things here at Avion Rewards. We're thinking about it in terms of what is it that our member, our Avion Rewards member, or that user really wants to be able to do. It's not to use a debit card or use a credit card. That's not the point of what they're doing. The point of what they're doing is to get a gift for their child for their birthday. It's to save a little bit of money in an inflationary time. And so those are the things we try to focus on when we build our experiences, and we try not to think so much about us and about the bank. And I think that's the key. And you're starting to see that trend shift a little bit more in financial services, especially with a few of the key players, RBC included. But more banks need to be doing it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I really like the way you put that, because there's really not that much that consumers want or expect from their banks and financial institutions. It's just a matter of them providing those services to the consumers in an exceptionally advanced and better way. Putting yourself in the shoes of the financial services customer, what do you think their expectations are in terms of financial transactions with their banks and checkout and payment systems when they do shop? I mean, those expectations are really changing generation to generation, right?
Yeah, I definitely think they are. And it's funny. I think that we're actually helping them change, and at the same time, maybe not doing a great job of keeping up with what that was. We kind of let the dinosaur out of the egg, right? And now it's running wild in the park, and we didn't really think through to the final stage on that one. I think when I stare at the modern consumer, the modern financial services customer, there are certain things that I think are very true. One of them is they expect always on access and information, right? I think we all do in today's modern times. I get frustrated when it takes a long time for a page to load on my iPhone now, despite the fact it's on 5G, right? We all kind of get frustrated with having to wait. And in financial services, transactions, spending, shopping, it's no different. It's a now kind of situation. I think largely customers are also expecting trust and safety and security. Banks still hold, according to the latest surveys, banks still hold more trust from consumers in terms of offering financial services and banking and money products. And we certainly can't afford to lose that trust. And customers don't deserve for us to not take that trust to heart. And so safety and soundness, trust, security, risk avoidance, risk management are essential components to what we need to do there. And the last one is, I do think customers are expecting a bit of a personalized experience. And when I say a bit, I mean a lot. I think customers expect us to know a lot about them. They give us a lot of data, and they do so willingly in some cases. They do so implicitly in others. But what we do with that first party and zero party data, it needs to live up to the expectation on the other side. We need to derive a certain amount of value for that end user from it, either to make their life easier, to make things go faster for them, to make it easier for them to find stuff, or make it easy for them to save money. And those are the three big areas that I would harp on from like a modern financial services customer and their expectations.
Yeah, I think you were talking about the whole dinosaur and egg thing. It reminds me of the iPhone. Nobody knew that they wanted or needed an iPhone until that technology was presented to them. So maybe we're teaching customers and shoppers that, hey, this is the new way to shop, and they're embracing that and coming up with their own expectations on top of that. Tell us about Avion Rewards and what might be unique about that program.
Yeah, of course. So Avion Rewards has been around under other auspices for quite some time. It's actually one of the longest running financial services proprietary rewards program in Canada. It's been around for decades. Formerly part of RBC Rewards and kind of tied to a credit card or a set of credit card products offered by that bank. We relaunched almost 2 years ago now, and we relaunched as Avion Rewards and expanded access to the service. So it's no longer bound to an underlying credit product producing that interchange value in exchange for points and travel and redemption and all that. It's actually a much larger program. We still have all those traditional loyalty things you would expect: the points, the travel, the redemption for retail and gift cards. But we also bring a lot of earning potential, a lot of value earning potential. And we brought it in the form of points and cash back, which is unique for a bank. What we're interested in doing, what we're there to do, is to help make our members and our clients' lives better. And it was and still is a very inflationary time. And we felt like bringing offer and merchant value, brand value in the form of coupons and discounts and points back and cash back to our clients across RBC, not just cardholders, was a really important way to be a deflationary force for them. We then took it a step further, and about a year later / a year ago, opened that platform up to all Canadians. And so you don't even need to be an RBC bank client now. And we did it with a splash. We did it with the Taylor Swift Eras Tour as kind of a big mashup. And a lot of people in Canada came on board because they were interested in what we had to offer, and they were interested in Taylor Swift and the Eras Tour, obviously. And we've seen really, really great movement from those non-clients who are Avion Select members, digging into the value that we're offering them in the form of cashback.
Is there an industry that Taylor Swift has not supercharged?
I don't think so. I don't think so. NFL, banking in Canada. No, yeah, I think she's got it covered.
Well, from a data perspective, what's needed and gathered across the credit card and loyalty program process, from application to card usage to rewards, and where does that data come from?
Yeah, so like the biggest source of data obviously is transactional data, right? The way we affect your reward, your award, whether it be in points and cash, is seeing that a transaction occurred at a merchant where you've activated some kind of offer with them. And it's a system that we built and host entirely on our own with our issuer processor and an offers engine in the back. We have a wonderful team of strategic account execs who work with our major partners in the Canadian market, and they do a fantastic job of putting really important Canadian brands in front of Canadian consumers. We also rely on a lot of information and data from some third-party providers. One of those is a browser extension provider that brings affiliate network data to us. It's Wildfire Systems. They do a fantastic job in partnership with us. They've helped enable the Shop Plus browser extension experience. And we also rely on service providers like Yodlee in order to connect to other transaction data sources. Because as I said, when we opened up to all Canadians, right, we don't have their transaction data on hand, right? And so in order to make sure that the customer is actually getting the value back on a transaction that they make at a merchant, we need to know that that transaction occurred. And so we use vendors and partners like Yodlee in order to get that information in and make sure that our customer is getting the full value back.
Well, you kind of touched on it, but this whole world of payments and merchant services and how my little candy shop can take payments in several ways, no matter where my customers might bank. Outline for me the level of interconnectivity amongst all those players that this ecosystem requires.
One of the great things about payments, I've been in payments a long, long time, for the last 12 years plus. And one of the great things about payments is it's such a complex ecosystem of players and positions that you could spend a lifetime and still only be an expert in a couple of areas. It's very much an ever-evolving kind of place. It makes it a very interesting spot, which is why I love it so much. There is a shocking amount of disconnectedness, actually, between processors and issuer processors and the schemes or the networks, the point of sale providers, the e-com point of sale providers, the wallets that sit on top of all of it in some cases. It is quite the diaspora of players. And so what's really important is to have a certain scale and size like an RBC does in the Canadian market to be able to affect exactly what I'm talking about. The only other way that you can really dig into that is by having kind of open access to that data. And that obviously raises or starts to raise some eyebrows about what data you have access to and why do you have access to it and what are you using it for.
So the elephant in the room is always security and data privacy, right? It seems like the younger the demographic, the more used to and open they are to sharing private info. They kind of accept the risks of leaks, identity theft is just kind of a fact of life. How are FinServ companies doing in providing assurance when everyone's running around town buying and chip inserting and swiping and tapping, buying online from all these sites? How do they reassure them that the system is as secure as it can get?
Yeah, look, I think the past few years have been an interesting change curve of kind of almost immediate outrage at the idea of massive data breaches a few years ago, up to a decade ago, to desensitization to the topic, to a lot of industry adjustments, whether it be compliance and legal driven or it be market and best practice driven. I think about things like the chips, for instance, which were not popular in the United States for a very long time, but were in other markets. That's a very secure method of transaction. It's one of the most secure methods of transaction. And so it's incumbent upon the financial services players, be they banks, schemes, third-party providers, to make sure they don't lose the trust I talked about earlier, and in fact, go above and beyond what is legally required or scheme required or ISO required for safety and soundness. Now, that's all for transactional data because it's very clear what the rules are and what the best practices are in order to make sure that that you're not falling victim to some of the concerns that you mentioned. There's all the other data, though, that isn't implicit in a transaction and might be explicitly given by a customer because we asked them or because we're giving them something back for it, or implicitly given by a customer because they don't realize they're giving it, but by nature they actually are. So I'll give you an example from one of my prior employers. We could use your physical transaction data in order to geofence your life, right? I didn't need your device, your phone, or to log your car's miles or anything like that to know roughly where you would operate, right? I could use your transaction data to do that. That's an implicit data point, and how I would ultimately use that would matter a lot, especially when it came to the trust of a customer. I think at the end of the day, any customer, regardless of age, but especially the younger demographic, if they see and are given clear and plain value in exchange for giving or having data used in a safe and sound and secure way, then I think by and large, the majority of people are in fact okay with that use. I'll give you a great example. If I know, for instance, from the example I just gave, that you are geofenced to a general area, and I use that data to help you save money at places that you might shop in that area, then I think you're okay with my use of that data in that way. If I use it to sell that information to somewhere else and try to make money on it, I don't think that's an acceptable use, right? I don't think people would generally find it to be an acceptable use. And so I think that there are clear lines that we can draw, some chalk lines we can draw that say if we're creating value for our members, for our users, if we're increasing their safety and soundness, if we're protecting them and their funds, which they trust us to do, then I think we can safely and soundly use some of that data given explicitly or implicitly and do so while maintaining trust and building better experiences for them at the same time.
Yeah, it just seems like a matter of making sure everyone has the impression that I'm getting a fair trade here in exchange for the information I'm willing to give up. It is a small world, and global commerce has always been a thing. So how hard or easy will it be to build true and free-flowing connectivity between all these different financial systems and stakeholders on a worldwide basis?
If history is any indicator, Michael, it's honestly going to be very hard. And that's because we've had ISO standards on a lot of these things for a very long time. And even with those ISO standards, we still aren't great at being interoperable globally. Now we're going to layer on this element of data and identity and access to information on top of those rails for money movement and value exchange. And those things, the things we're laying on top, don't have standards that interoperate with each other, right? Every region and geo or state or country has kind of its own take on things. And so there's going to be a need to kind of like massively stitch together the cohesive view of that. And there's probably going to be a decent amount of business interoperating across those geos. You look at some of the announcements that Visa has made recently, for example, in some of their product sets for the consumer. That the whole point of what they're doing there is to remain in the center as a trusted network by abstracting complexity away from the user, right? They're assuming the responsibility for that complexity from the user and from the bank, and as a result, remaining at the center. And I think that's a model similar to what MasterCard started taking on in the mid-teens of 2000, for example. And so I think you're going to start to see, in order for global commerce to really become truly interoperable, I think you're going to need to see data and payment rail players start to assume each other's roles a little bit more heavily and or come up with ways that they can better interoperate.
Well, Avery, it's been really great having you on the show. If listeners want to find out more about RBC or Avion Rewards or even you, what's the best ways for them to do that?
Well, if anybody's interested in reaching out to me and jawing more about the topic, I certainly will never, ever turn that down. So I'm always happy to do that. If anybody in Canada is interested in learning more about Avion Rewards, they can go to our public site, avionrewards.com. It's free to sign up, again, whether you have an RBC account or not. So sign up, check out what we've got going on, and maybe get yourself enrolled in some of the Taylor Swift Eras Tour experiences we've got coming.
You know how to lure them in.
Indeed.
All right, well, we've got that info, and for our listeners, be sure to subscribe to the show. A lot of smart people to listen to here, as you just heard. And if you want to see how aggregated financial data might be of great use in your business, visit resources.yodlee, that's YODLEE.com/podcasts. And we'll see you next time on Data Driven Finance.